Hello, everybody. This is Regina White, your motivational strategist in the house. I'm actually doing a live podcast today, dealing with healing into wholeness with Rev Jocyln Jones. She will be up with us in a little bit. But this will be another purpose-filled, powerful conversation that we'll be having. And today we're having an honest conversation. I'm dealing with healing, wholeness, transformation, and the courage that it actually takes to endure the pain and turn it into purpose. So we will be bringing our guests up after the intro. The Queen's Table, where we create space for real conversations that help people move forward with clarity and attention. I'm your host, Regina White, the motivational strategist. Enjoy the show.
Hey G,
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing great. How you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful, and welcome to the At the Queen's Table podcast. Um, Listen, I'm all about pushing people and helping people move, and it seemed like you already got a head start on this thing. So just before, we get to talk about your accolades and everything that you actually do. We want our listeners to know the woman behind the calling. So, who is Reverend Jocyln? And what does healing mean to you
Mm.
personally?
Well, Reverend Jocyln is a daughter of Christ
Mhm.
and the daughter in the natural of James A. Jones and Marion Jones, who just loves to serve and help people to know who they are as a daughter, as a son of Christ. Now, I'm called to women, and the ministry of healing, as you mentioned, is something I'm very passionate about. Um, I think healing is something where we can be the healed in the healing. In certain areas, we have healed in a standpoint of being able to remember and recognize what took place in our life and not minimize the pain that we've experienced,
Mhm.
but it's at a place in which it no longer controls us and stops us from experiencing all the emotions in moments in life that can potentially give us joy. So that's how healed looks. But sometimes we're the healing. We're in process where
Mhm.
we are still being reminded and working through certain things from our past. And that's okay. It's not necessarily a lack of faith to be healing on this journey.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because I always heard, there's purpose behind your pain, and you're not just going, through your stuff just because. And like I said, we always hear that, but sometimes it might not be at the right time that we really want to hear that. But
That's
it is true when they say that there's purpose behind your pain because it's a test, for every testimony.
mm-hmm,
There's a
mm-hmm.
test for every testimony.
For sure. Sometimes that test seemed like a category 5 hurricane test, but we making it. We still standing. We live to
Yes,
tell the
ma'am.
story.
Yes, ma'am. So when did you first recognize that God, was calling you to this purpose?
Oh, sister, this was not something that was overnight. When I think back to just my time in ministry, I've been working in full time ministry since the age of 23. I was given an opportunity to work at my church full time at the youth center connected to my church. And I was like, oh my gosh, full time ministry. Yes, this is amazing. And so I was doing this for several years and going to school to equip myself. I got my master's in social work and I'm building, and I was promoted to the executive director and ran that nonprofit for a decade,
Mm-hmm.
doing this work and loving it. And it was meaningful. But at some point, I was feeling this feeling that probably many of the people listening right now is feeling, which is God is calling me to more. That
Mm-hmm.
season, that assignment was coming to an end. And when God was prompted me. I was like, okay, but what does more look like?
Right.
So I went to seminary school to try to find myself. I was asking professors to help me out, and they're like, your calling, this is something we can't tell you. And I'm like, oh my
Yes.
God. So I'm praying and I'm fasting to ask God to show me. And I remember one day at the end of the fast running into the old youth minister at my church at an
Mhm.
event. And I was telling her, I'm like, man, I feel like God is calling me to start my own ministry. I don't know what this looks like, and I'm scared and all this. And she was like, breathe.
Bring it in.
Like, take a breath. And she said something I'll never forget. She said, Jocyln, God orders your steps, not
Mm-hmm.
your leaps.
Mm-hmm.
And at that moment, my brain almost short circuited because I wanted to have like all the answers around my next step. But she
Yes.
was reminding me I just needed to take that next step of faith to start my ministry. And for me, that step of faith was writing a blog about how God helped people to heal from trauma.
Ah.
And for me, that was low key. That was me working through some of my trauma when I was writing stories of other people's healing journey because I'm a sexual trauma survivor. And so I was working
Oh
through
wow.
that, and I started writing a blog and then wrote a book and then a podcast, and I'm like building some things. And I made the leap to start focusing on this new ministry, this new focus of trauma healing. I made the leap to go full time into this. And I told
Okay.
my girlfriend over coffee, I was like, girl, I did the leap. I left my full-time job and I got a blog and I got a podcast and I got this
Right.
book and I got this YouTube channel, and it's going to be amazing. And she was staring at me because sis got a background in financial planning. And she was
Mm.
looking at me like, Jocyln, I don't understand your business model. And she was really saying, girl, you left your full-time job to do this.
Right. To
And
do
I
the
don't
right.
how you gonna make money off the things that you saying to pay your mortgage. And I was like, you know what? I was salty, but she was right. And I had to like quickly figure out like, okay, there's this business side to ministry. And
Mhm.
I, invested in coaching and like nearly over the last 7 years, probably close to $100,000 in coaching and support and things to learn to hone my craft to be
Right.
able to build what I've been able to build today. And over time, we went from being a simple blog to natural Christian trauma healing business that served thousands over the years. I work with several dozen churches in Chicago. We're ranked number one on Google in Christian trauma counseling in Chicago. We've
Mhm.
serving so many people in the trauma healing space. And that's really empowered me to show other women now who are called to build a kingdom business how to start their kingdom business in a way that's sustainable and leaves a legacy.
That's awesome. And now that you're talking about what your ministry is, would you mind letting our listeners know everything that you do, like all your accolades?
Yeah. Well, I mean, some of them I mentioned, like in
Yes.
the work that we do. Like, so my company name is Faith on the Journey,
Mhm.
and is named off of just the story of me taking this journey of faith, right? And so, with some of the things that we've been able to do, I have a podcast that I developed. We were named top 15 Christian podcasts on emotional healing in 2025 by
That's
FeedSpot,
awesome.
which is pretty cool. But I think, accolades aside, what really has been amazing for me is the hundreds of people who I've been able to certify over the years. I'm a master facilitator with the Trauma Healing Institute, so I've
Okay.
certified hundreds of people in like a Christian trauma healing curriculum to help them start their biblical healing ministry, and
Right.
that's been extremely rewarding. And on the other side of that, I've helped other women who wanted to coach, wanted to write books, wanted to, just answer the call that God gave them. I've helped
Absolutely.
hundreds of women to get started with building their kingdom business and answering that call. And for me, that there's nothing more fulfilling than that.
Listen, I understand that because I've been through quite a bit of trauma my own self, and it's to a point where it got me to where I am now. It helped me build and help others to build as well. So it sounds like the things that you're doing is helping people to reclaim their story.
Yeah. It,
So,
yeah, it's stand on their story. Like, because I think that sometimes when people go through something traumatic, we can be in a place where we are reliving the trauma, we're stuck. And I mean, sometimes the events that took place are horrific. I
mhm,
don't minimize that.
right,
I don't want someone to who has experienced trauma to remain a prisoner of the trauma. And so,
right.
how do we recognize the truth of the situation that this was horrific, and also understand that God still has you here and you survived? So, how do we move forward in a way in which you can like reclaim your life? It's going to
Mhm.
be different after the trauma, but in a way, some people can, if they have the right support, they can experience post traumatic growth and still experience growth again and be at a place where they can stand on their story in a way where it can help other people. I've seen
Okay.
so many sisters even start ministries from their trauma.
Yes. Yes, I've seen a lot of people also start nonprofits with, their trauma as well, because they've been through it and they know what it takes. So they start reaching out and asking for help, or for assistance on what they're doing, because there are many people out there that are going through things, and if they were anything like I used to be a emotional hoarder. I used to hold everything inside. I wouldn't talk to nobody about nothing. And, it was always between me and God, I would handle it. But what it started doing was affecting my health. It started affecting my blood pressure. Start messing with the stress. The stress start, becoming that silent thing that was hurting my body. So um when it comes to triggers, I always talk about triggers a lot. So and I feel like when you understand your triggers, you can also understand the trauma and grief that you're going through your pain.
Hmm. Understanding is important because that, I think sometimes we can judge our responses in a way and we just don't know what's going on.
Mhm.
And when you don't have language to name the feeling and understand that what you're going through is actually a normal response to, in many cases, a unusual, terrible situation,
Right.
then that's the first step. But then we have to take it a step further and actually be committed to doing the work. I
Mhm.
remember when I was navigating a traumatic situation and I was talking to a girlfriend and she said something that was profound to me. She said, "The only way to heal is to hurt."
Mm.
And I was like, "What?" Because who wants that? Like, I
Right.
would much rather run from my pain and not deal with my junk and be bag lady like Erica Badu because we be carrying.
Right.
But no, like pack light, as she says, because it's one of those things that stuff gets heavy. And you got all this baggage that you've been carrying from your earlier years and today. And
Mhm.
after a while, that lady, you gonna be laid out. So for
Mhm.
me, I've learned that, all right, I'm gonna have to face this stuff,
Yeah.
and we often find things to do to cope, to avoid. For me, my addiction of choice was work and throwing myself into ministry and being busy to
Me
hide from
too.
my junk, but it was still me running from my pain. And if you don't deal with your stuff, it affects you in all areas of your life. It affects you in romantic relationships,
Mhm.
personal relationships, how you see yourself, and it sabotages you from going to your next. Because if you don't
Mhm.
deal with those limiting beliefs and fears and things that keep you hiding. A lot of the women who I coach who desire to start ministries and kingdom businesses, they're
Right.
hiding and they don't feel like they're enough. And they don't feel like they have a voice, and they all these different limiting beliefs stopping them from saying yes to what God is calling them to do. And this is why I believe we can benefit from a counselor and a coach to help us to
Yes.
answer our call.
Yes, and that's very important because at the end of the day, I was in that place where I didn't want to deal with my reality, so I would bury myself in work, and I didn't want to, talk about it or even be around it. So I would keep myself busy where I wouldn't have to deal with it, and I called that my numbing stage at the time. So for the ones who's actually going through that numbing stage, how do they know that they are? What are some signs? that lets them know that they have not dealt with an unresolved trauma.
Mm. Yeah, so I think some signs is the fact that you might be responding to a situation
Mm,
that is on level 2 and you responded on level 10. And you
mm,
don't understand why you responded on 10 to
right.
a level 2 situation. That's something that we can see. I also it's 3 categories that we see usually be behaviors of someone who's experienced trauma. So one is being on alert all the time.
Mm,
So when you're on alert all the time, you might be like having nightmares or flashbacks or expecting the next shoe to drop. Like you're like anticipating what's taking place or what will take place. You're replaying the situation all the time. And that's actually reliving the experience. Excuse me.
yes.
That's reliving the experience. Reliving the experience through flashbacks, nightmares, replaying the situation. That's number one. Number two is being on alert all the time. That is like, okay, wait, it's like I'm ready to fight, like heart
Yes.
palpitations, like you just like kind of you also see sometimes with kids, stomach aches. That's something that's a result of being on alert all the time and then avoiding the situation.
Yeah.
Oftentimes people who have not fully recovered from certain events, and I mean sometimes it's like recovery is like our lifetime in certain cases, but it could be something where you are not going to certain places anymore, you stop doing anything that reminds you of that event, you pick up certain addictions, eating, sex, all of that to numb. So those
Mm.
are some signs around the trauma.
And I'd be thinking too, like some environments, some smells,
Yep.
back, well, about a couple of years ago, I used to work at a facility where there was some women who was dealing with some trauma things, and I had on this lotion, and she was like, "Who got that lotion on?" And I was like, "What lotion are you talking about?" And she actually said the name of the lotion, and I said, "Oh, that's me." She said, I can't be around that because it's triggering some things in me." And I said, "Huh?" And she was explaining to me why it was triggering. So I made sure whenever I was around her, I would not wear that lotion, and that was just out of respect. But the same token, when you're dealing with somebody who's been triggered, you don't want them to go back into that headspace, especially if
Correct.
you're helping them heal,
Yeah.
especially if
Yeah.
you're helping them heal.
Yeah.
So have you ever experienced that before where you did something that kind of triggered somebody?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. It happens. The body remembers. You know, the famous book, "The Body Keeps the Score." We're
Hmm.
going to remember certain things through the five senses that'll take us back. It could be something as, like you said, a smell. It could be something that we see,
Hmm.
or that's something that people say. But here's the thing: you can't help if you're triggered.
Yeah.
But you do have responsibility for how you manage those triggers, and this is what requires the work.
Yes.
So yeah, so G, in the work that you're doing, I'm just curious, particularly because you have answered your call to building a kingdom business. I would love to spend a little bit more time talking about like how you have felt in that space of doing this thing, and what maybe your audience might like to hear around building their kingdom business. Would you have any thoughts around that?
Yes. My thing was when I first started anything, it actually started with I used to hold this women group every month, and I call it Sisters of Splendor. And so we all will meet up that one once a month. And the thing was, when I was called to it, I said, okay, I'm just a vehicle. I'm just gonna gather these women together. I don't know who they are. A lot of them was my family and friends, and some people just coming in. And but when I found out just within the first meeting is that some women just didn't trust the women. They had trust issues with women. They had trust issues, like period. Some of them, they were loners. They didn't talk to nobody, so they were emotional hoarders like me. But what it wound up doing, it started the healing session. It gave them a safe place to come in, let their hair down, to talk, to get to know one another, build sisterly bonds. And it also helped a lot of them start trusting women, so they were healing in different places during different meetings, because all the meetings were not alike. I like to switch stuff up real fast. So
That's
but I will always
amazing.
start with the icebreaker, and that just breaks the mold. So there have been some crying times, there have been some laughing times, there have been some real talk times, where we come at our sisters in love, to let them know, this is where you need healing from, or this is where we are doing construction on. So once that start growing, then after that, I wind up being on the radio. I have my own radio show on Saturdays, and so it spun off from that to podcasting to even like now my husband now, we when we go places, people just start talking to us about their problems and what's going on and what you think we should do. So it just became our ministry. So it started out as a single ministry to now I have a partner, and
I
he
love that for you.
comes from the male perspective and I come from the female perspective. So yeah.
That's
That,
beautiful. And it seems like when you're talking about it, this is the beautiful thing. It's one thing that it brings you joy when you
mhm,
are working in this a space of purpose and meaning. It
mhm.
it gives you joy. And I think one of the things that I love helping women with is just being able to identify that thing. A lot
Yeah.
of women struggle with, okay, I'm called, but called to what does this look like, and who am I best equipped to serve, and how do I do it? And one of the things that I ask is three primary questions when a woman is really seeking like to build a ministry, build a kingdom business beyond the church. I
Mhm,
ask them, okay, first, who are the people who you feel drawn to, like
mhm.
when it comes to maybe it's a certain group of people who were the younger version of you. They've gone through certain experiences, but like you are passionate about that, you feel connected to them, they feel
Mhm.
drawn to you. So who are the people? The next question that I'd like to ask is what cause burdens you? Like, so usually there is something that you might see on the news or you hear about and you get worked up about it and you're like, someone
Oh
should do
man.
something about it. And
Ah,
that someone is you, sis. If you
yeah.
like drawn to, dealing with issues around domestic violence or foster care or whatever that is, that's a cause that God gave you, that's a burden that needs an answer. You could be the answer to someone's prayer. But the
Yes.
final, the final question that I always like to ask sisters is, okay, think about your gifts. Those gifts are not just for you. And if there is a gift, and let's go beyond just saying the word gifts. If you have an anointing in certain areas and people are
Yes.
looking at you like, wow, like I don't even know how sis does that. And you just like, well, I don't know. It's kind of easy to me.
Mhm.
These gifts are a sign. And so when you look at all of those things I mentioned, and I give this equation, is looking at, okay, when you look at your passion, the people who you're passionate about serving, and plus those gifts that you have, and
Right.
a need in this world, this burden that is bothering you. When you add those three together and you figure out that code, that equals purpose driven work. And that,
Yes.
sister, is fulfillment. And that's what I love supporting women with.
Hey, I look. The thing is, and the I wouldn't say the crazy thing, but the awesome thing is March of this year, I actually did my first initial sermon. And so when I did my initial sermon, I really felt like I was preparing to get married at the altar. And they were like, you know what? That's what it is. That you're committing to God, of doing this thing for Him. And so, it's like when women step into their purpose, that's what it feels like. You are in the waiting room, waiting, to walk down the aisle to your purpose, and so I like I said, it happened in March, but of course, afterward, everybody was like, "You've been doing this for you. You just finally making it official." So it's like something that you really have to look into. What am I doing on a daily that I feel like I'm just now stepping to my purpose, where people had already seen the purpose?
Man, they didn't see it. Girl, they been seeing it. You like, we late to the party.
Yeah, we are. We are. Or we just taking our time and just making sure
Mhm.
it's right, because that's how we are in relationships. Before we commit, we want to make sure we're making the right decision, and that
Yes,
I'm gonna commit to it, because I always say if I can't give my 100%, then I ain't gonna do it.
that's good. That's a good litmus test.
So
Yeah,
I always say that. So when it comes to purpose after the pain, how would you actually, like, what are some tips to give women or men who's actually going through the purpose after the pain?
I would say that as you are going through your purpose after the pain, don't do it alone.
Yeah.
Don't don't try to be someone who's on the solo tip, because it's difficult when it comes to kingdom entrepreneurship, comes to answering that call, turning your pain into purpose. You will still have days
Yeah.
where you are struggling. You remember it's an anniversary, it's a birthday, it's like people aren't showing up or things follow through the setbacks. This entrepreneurship journey has been the biggest test of my faith in my life.
Yeah.
And the only thing outside of like Jesus keeping me is been a community and having people around, having a coach to be like, hey, you don't quit. You can take a day off, take
Mm-hmm.
two, but
Mm-hmm.
don't stop. Having
Right.
people who will pray with me, not just talk about it, be like, oh, sister so and so going through. No, pray,
Right. Right.
like and encourage and walk and give me water when I'm thirsty.
Mm-hmm.
So having
Mm-hmm.
people around you who are going to support you in this journey, it matters.
Now, what I loved about Sisters of Splendor too was the fact that it was almost like Power Rangers. When Power Rangers getting ready to fight this enemy, they all had different powers, but they came together to defeat it. So in that group or in that social circle, it was always a different gift that catered to everybody in the in that space, and that's what I loved about it, especially when it came to prayer.
That's beautiful.
So yeah, that's what I really, really did love about Sisters of Splendor. They was able to come together, and everybody had different gifts, and the gifts activated because they were in that environment where they could. They was in
Mm.
that safe place where they could.
That's good. That's
Hmm.
good. I love that. And I mean, I pray that more people do what you've done to create community, to help people have safe spaces so that they can heal and grow and grow not only personally but in their faith.
Yes. Yes, ma'am. Now, so if people want to reach out to you, or I guess get to know everything that about you, what are some ways that they can connect with you?
Yeah. So first place they could go is my website, revjocyln.com. Thank you. You're on it. You're on it. In addition to that, on socials, I'm at Rev Jocyln, everything. And my happy place, I love Facebook, but I'm also on YouTube. YouTube Sisters is where you want to be. To follow me, you'll see like all my links at Rev Jocyln again on
Okay.
YouTube. And I'm live every Sunday night at 6:30 p.m. Central. I'm live on YouTube teaching women how to build their kingdom businesses, build that ministry, answer that call. And so I would love for them to hang out with me on YouTube on Sunday nights at 6:30.
That's awesome. I'm so glad that you were able to join me, today to talk with us about the healing and the transformation, and, everything about healing into wholeness, purpose for our pain. I thank you for taking this time out to share with us about it and everything. Is there anything that you would like to leave, little nuggets you want to leave behind before we close out?
Yeah, I would just say, well, one thing I would actually just want to give a gift. Any sister who feels called to build a ministry or kingdom business, if you go to
Mhm.
the website, revjocyln.com, there's going to be like just a pop up that allows for you to download a free ministry launch starter kit there.
Mhm.
Because I really do want you to answer the call, just like G just has done, just like me. Whatever that looks like for you, I want you to be supported. And so go ahead and get that gift to help you to take your first step and grow in your ministry.
That's awesome. That's awesome. We thank y'all so much for tuning in to at the Queen's Table podcast. Thank you so much, Rev Jocyln, for spending time with us. And y'all know how I like to end with Lord, open the door that need to be open, close the door that needs to be closed. Let the open doors be so obvious that I may walk in my purpose just for today. And until next time, we're out.